The thing is, when news spread that Sherlock Holmes was gone, that's when the criminals started rejoicing, and they started taking back to the streets of London, and suddenly felons were opening up their businesses again, and criminal gangs were regrouping, and crooks were crawling out of the woodwork, and they were all taking full advantage. And fear and panic spread throughout London. It was rife throughout the public, and the public looked to us, the police force, for help and protection and guidance. And suddenly we found ourselves outmatched, overstretched, exhausted, and a lot of my colleagues were giving up, but I can't give up. Because I work closely with Detective Lestrade, and we all know that he worked closely with Sherlock Holmes, or maybe he worked for Sherlock Holmes, I'm not entirely sure. But either way, Lestrade doesn't have the same methods or knowledge that Sherlock Holmes had. And Lestrade talks all the time, oh, Sherlock Holmes, he was a loose cannon, he worked outside the law, he was a law unto himself, but that's how he got cases solved. That's why Lestrade worked with him. It was efficient. And so, yes, I've studied Sherlock Holmes' methods my whole working life. I grew up on stories of Sherlock Holmes. I remember being inspired by him as a kid when I saw him in the marketplace with my mother. We were out one day and we looked up at this factory window, and there was this really heavy-set, stocky man. And he jumped out of the window, landed, and then ran off. And we looked back, and a few moments later, this less assuming, more slender man jumped out of the same window, and he gave chase. And they ran through the marketplace towards the shipyard, and I watched them go. And I turned back to my mother and I asked her, who was that smaller man chasing after that bigger man? And she said, oh, it's Sherlock Holmes, the famous detective. And I was inspired by that. If you can run after someone fighting for justice without fear, no matter what your stature or size, then I wanted to do that. And so, yes, I've studied Sherlock Holmes' methods. So when the letters arrived at the police station and they were giving us clues on how to catch these felons and messages on how to take them off the streets, they had the hallmark and the imprint all over them of Sherlock Holmes and his methods. And so I started questioning whether he really was dead or whether he was alive working from the shadows. And the only person I knew who had the possible answer to those questions was Dr. Watson. And so, yes, I went to the hospital. I asked Dr. Watson some questions, and yes, I may or may have not let slip that Irene Adler, there was rumours of her still being alive, but that's when a letter landed on my desk personally from Dr. Watson a few days later, asking me to go see him again. And I could ask him the questions that I needed the answers to. And he said he had to tell me something, and he sent me the letter on the behalf of someone else.